can't count the times I almost said what's on my mind, but I didn't. Just the other day, I wrote down all the things I'd say, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Baby, I know that you've been wondering. Oh, so here goes nothing. In case you didn't know, baby, I'm crazy about you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, grasshoppers. We're going to look at a Chess Informant 158 study. Put a couple of things aside. Hopefully they won't fall. But we are using Chess Informant 158, the #1 publication among chess professionals since 1966. It is an amazing volume now with the first half of the books featuring instructional articles on opening play, middle game play, recaps of recent events, and things like that. Honestly, we're going to make this a very quick study, and we are going to feature some 30-second breaks for question and answer. And honestly, if you really must know, studying master games will improve your piece coordination by osmosis, and who you study really does affect how you play. I can't remember how many rating points I lost studying Mikhail Tal's games when I wasn't ready, as I attempted many an unsound sacrifice, and all of my sacrifices, unfortunately, if they were unsound, were proven to be. Now, in this particular game, we could begin with e4 or d4 or c4, but we're going to start with the first game of the volume between Hugo Hertog versus Hertog-Smeets. And this game is a perfect illustration of how an innocuous opening can result in an absolute demolition and catastrophe of an opponent's position in less than 30 moves. And we're not going to take that much time to do it. After the moves, knight f3, d5 is a perfectly acceptable response as we are controlling the e4 square. White continues with g3. And after knight f6, bishop g2, we have a full-fledged King's Indian attack. It is not a ready until white has played the move c4 or attacked the center with a pawn from the side. And in this particular instance, black chooses a very classical setup. When white castles, black now decides that he has to take matters into his own hands. And openings like the King's Indian attack may incite your opponents to crush you, for example. They may actually incite your opponents to crush you. So black could play b6 and bishop to b7. He could continue to control the center with c5. But instead he chooses to move b5. He goes for it. He prevents the reti altogether with c4. And white now has to choose whether or not and how to break open the center in their favor. White decides how they are going to open up lines, because black's king is not leaving the center, it appears, anytime soon. So it's at this moment that white chooses to make what I consider an essential pawn break. This is not a pawn sacrifice, as white always has to move queen to a4 check, picking up the pawn at the end in case the pawn is captured twice with b takes c4, d takes c4, and d takes c4. We're always just going to get it back. Now, of course, you might think that it's a true gambit if black captures first with the d pawn, and after d takes c4, queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and b takes c4. However, these two pawns that are doubled on the open file will not necessarily be long for this world, as white has many ways to go after them. So, as a result, black chooses to hold his ground with with the space on the queen side with a6. And after the move c takes d5, black misses an opportunity to centralize his knight and chooses instead to place a pawn in front of his bishop on b7. Now this bishop on b7 is a little bit in the lurch behind this pawn on d5, as it could be considered out of the game, as the white bishop on b2, for example, and many Kali Zukertort setups. So therefore, it's up to white in this position to choose how to continue. We'll look for candidate moves. Candidate moves for white. Now, of course, if you're watching, you should pause the video. Write down your 3 moves, so you're absolutely committed to those 3 moves. If you're even lower rated, I would attempt to write down 5 moves for white. Now, if you do write down the move that white plays, I would consider that hitting the sweet spot of what a master thinks. Now, of course, you could score an ace. We're continuing with some tennis metaphors here. If you were to choose to circle one of your 5 moves or one of your 3 moves if you're a stronger player, and if that move happened to be the move a4, breaking up the pawns on the queen side, that would be excellent. However, white chose a different move, which is a little bit slower. White chose instead to play knight on b to d2, and after the move c5, black seems to have quite a grip on the queen side and the center. And after the moves knight to b3, bishop e7, knight to h4, g6 to cover that weak square c5, we can see that white has now unleashed the bishop on g2 to try to accomplish something for whatever particular reason. Now, g6 is just the weakness that white was looking for. Black more than likely should have just castled. I believe in king safety, and you have to prioritize these things for yourself. After all, this is why we play chess. You have to get your pieces active, control the center, that is, grabbing a certain amount of space for yourself, and being very aware of your king's safety. And in this particular instance, after the move g6, it weakens the dark squares immensely, and now black cannot castle through check, because we cannot cross a square that would put us into check. And as a result, black continues his development without a care in the world, and it's at this moment that we're going to ask you once again to look for candidate moves for white. And this is a subscriber chat only stream when it's instruction on Twitch, but of course that doesn't stop you from heading over to YouTube and chatting there, which is actually also where I want you to check out all of the featured instructional videos from this stream and subscribe. I'm not asking as much as that you hit the notification bell, but certainly subscribe and help the channel. Now, if one of your several moves contained our previous candidate move of a4, you should definitely mark yourself up for a win, as this move is still a vital part of white's plan. However, white has other things in mind. If for any reason you chose to place a bishop on h3, this is also a very interesting move, and certainly you should score yourself a point if you circled that. It's a perfectly acceptable move and one of the best in the position. However, the move that the Grandmaster actually chose, the sweet spot that I'm asking you to find, is e4. e4 was the move that he chose. Now, I'm giving it an exclamation mark primarily because it assists in his winning the game quickly. Unlike Philidor, who merely said pawns are the soul of chess, I truly believe that pawn breaks are the soul of chess. These are the moves that open files for your rooks and enable your rooks on semi-open files to lift up and cross the ranks toward flanks of the board where you might be able to continue your attack. Black, however, is not afraid of this, it seems, as he plays d takes e4, d takes e4, and c4, bothering the knight. And it's at this moment that we're going to go with candidate moves again for white. Now again, if you're watching on demand, please pause the video and give yourself time to write down 3 if not 5, candidate moves in this position alone. I'm not talking about a sequence of moves. Candidate moves in this position alone. So that means that you could choose a knight move, obviously, a queen move, perhaps even a pawn move. And circle that move to commit yourself to attempting to match the wits with the Grandmaster. And if you did choose the counter-attacking move, the strongest level of defense, e5, that is a whopping point for you. Because this move doesn't just attack the knight on f6, it also attacks the bishop on b7. That knight on b3 is rather inconsequential. A very curious move just one move ago that was also good for white with the same idea in mind was the move queen to e2. And it is curious that if black had captured on this square, black's king would find himself in some very curious trouble with either rook on f to d1 or rook on a to d1. Rook on f to d1, preparing the move e5 and e6, or e takes f6, basically taking control over the d5 square. The discovery on the bishop on b7 would be rather immense. However, this position is only equal. It's a very curiously interesting move, queen e2. But after the move c4, which attacks a knight, a counter-attacking move, the highest level of defense, attacks something of equal or greater value in defense of what has been attacked by your opponent. If your opponent attacks a knight, you might want to attack a rook, or a knight with a pawn in this particular case. If your opponent attacks your queen, you might want to threaten checkmate, or give a check, and that ensures the safety of whatever piece they've just attacked for just that moment. Now, in this particular moment, black should have exchanged bishops, but he chose not to. Instead, he chose the rather ordinary move, centralizing his knight with knight to e4. d5 was off limits, so he chose knight to e4. Queen to e2 once more, as our candidate moves. Stockpile, good moves, that's all we're looking for, is good moves, and candidate moves. And then we'll be able to determine which one is the better move or which one might be the best move. And we can only get those assessments of those moves by comparing a group of moves, not unlike how you might shop in a supermarket or shop for electronics on Amazon or any other service. In this particular case, black has many choices. He tries to reinforce his knight on e4 with knight to c5, improving the knight from d7. And after knight takes c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes b7, knight takes b7, we find that the knight has now been placed offsides, and it is once again white's turn to move. So we have a variety of choices to choose from. All of these moves could be good. Once again, we are searching for candidate moves for white. Pause the video, write down several moves, if not almost half a dozen. Circle one of those moves. After a brief comparison and a bit of analysis, choose which move is most important to you to continue the game. That is the only way you're going to get better, is constantly trying to test yourself against known knowledge. That is, the Grandmaster won the game using certain moves for a reason. Stockfish or any other engine may choose alternate moves, but remember, Stockfish doesn't have a continuity of thought.
BG7 CAD 1.
Rook on A to D1 is absolutely the move that I would more than likely play. However, Hugo chose E6 in this particular position, preparing to expose the king. Now, black had a few choices here. Perhaps to centralize the knight and bring it to the defense of the king in order to recapture would have been best. But instead, black chose the rather carefree knight to c5, allowing the possible opening up of the position. However, as Ron just mentioned,
hello there.
And as we understand, bishop to g7, Momo Chess. Welcome. This is going to be excruciatingly short, as I have a lesson coming up shortly, and I don't want to be that late for the lesson. White chooses Ron's candidate move from the previous moment. And bishop g7 was also an intriguing move, Momo. I have to admit, I don't want to overlook your suggestion there. But here, after rook on a to d1, black chooses to anchor his knight on the 6th rank. That is the 6th rank away from black's 1st rank. And that should be the most valuable piece one could hope for. But after e takes f7 check, king takes f7, white gets a chance to centralize his rook at the expense of taking advantage of the pin on black's queen, the pin of the knight, pin on the knight of black's queen. So after rook on f to e1, we can see that the e6 square is in the mix. So black chooses queen to d6, and now white doesn't necessarily choose the best possible move. Well, actually it does for a moment. He plays queen to f3 check, and after bishop f6 does not follow up with bishop queen to b7 check, but instead chooses to bring his knight back. Not that he's throwing away much of his advantage, but he's following a human course of thought. The question mark was added by Stockfish. And now, candidate moves for black. Now, I'm not going to shift the board, but I am going to ask you to look for candidate moves for black as to why this move was not the best move. Whoops.
Chess Kudo
says
Candidate moves for black.
https www.chess.com game live 1001930051001 username the
Chess Kudo. I'm looking forward to it. I really need it in the Discord channel. So we're looking for candidate moves for black in this particular position. This is not part of our regular stream. This is a quick couple of minutes left stream.
You're turning heads when you walk through the door. Don't need makeup to cover up. Being the way that you are is enough. Everyone else in the room can see it.
So in this particular position, black, yes, should have played a counterattacking move. Yes, it may be rather dangerous, but black should have played the move. Knight takes e1. Now, granted, white's advantage is still relatively prevalent after the move rook takes e1. But had white tried to throw in the move queen to b7 check, black could have crossed and covered because the rook is no longer on the e1 square. Instead, after the move bishop f4, black chose to move what was being attacked, and this shows me that either Hertog-Smeets is closer to my age and no longer as strong as he once was, or he truly did believe that moving his queen was the best. Now white continues harassing the queen, and black decides, unfortunately, to defend against white's threat with queen to b6. One more time for candidate moves for black. One more time for candidate moves for black. And now, instead of the move queen to b6, though, we're looking for 3 better moves, if not more. And here we are. Those of you who have not yet suggested could white have tried rook to d7 after the queen block on e7? Oh yeah, maybe I overlooked that. Let's take a quick look at that after this question is answered. But it would have been 2 rooks for the queen. You wouldn't be recapturing on e1. probably bishop takes h4 on rook d7. And so on the previous move, basically it was if knight takes e1 on the previous move, queen to b7, check, queen to e7, rook to d7. Remember, black has already taken one free rook. And bishop takes h4, g takes h4, and rook on a to e8 might suffice. So in this particular position, the move that black really had to try was queen takes f2 check to nullify all the dangers to his king. Yes, black would be losing, but he would not lose, perhaps, as horribly as he does in the game, as after queen to b6, just trying to defend against the threat of queen to b7 check, white now dives in with queen to d5 check, and after king to g7, queen to d7 check, king to g8, white misses a chance to end the game in a slightly more beautiful manner. So our last candidate move, perhaps, for white in this particular position Chess Kudo, all of you, Momo, thank you all for being here. Ron, for you. You sent me a chess.com link, Chess Kudo. Please put it in the Discord for Games for Analysis, and I will definitely chalk it up for a later stream. And I am definitely interested. I'm sorry for the trouble not to see it now. Thank you so much. Bishop h6 indeed is the move that leads to a forced checkmate. It may appear dangerous because of queen takes f2, king h1, but there's literally hardly a move that can stop queen to e6 check. He can throw a few things in the way, such as bishop to e7 in order to block with the queen. However, there's more where that came from after queen takes e7 and rook takes e7. Or he could also just play the immediate rook to e7, threatening rook to g7 check and the discovered mate with rook takes g6. So when the queen arrived, yeah, rook to e8 check, so bishop e7 was almost the only move. White did not find bishop h6, but instead plays the move rook takes d3, which is very sad to ruin such a beautiful game. And when white recaptures automatically, we now follow through on the move that all of you found, and all of you found to be equally deadly, as there is no counterplay now on f2. Quite a very cool continuation. Thank you all for being here. Chess Informant has been around since 1966. This is a very special YouTube stream just for the instruction for subscribers only. Thank you all for being here. Not yet subscribed to YouTube.
I must say that the music is quite loud.
Videos. We'll move it down just a little bit. So, needless to say, cheers and ciao. I will be back. I'm trying for hourly, on the hour instructional streams periodically when I can put them in.
Dark Plate
said, "You always catch me sleepy with the streams that require thinking."
Thank you, Dragon. Dark Blade, Dragon Emperor, Chess Kudo, Namaste for the game link. I did save it separately. Cheers and ciao, everyone. have a... Whoop. Our raid was not going through.
Chess Kudo.
Said. Thank you for the stream, take care MCD.
Dark
No, thank
Blade.
you.
Said. Have an amazing day, Sensei.
This is the last day of Chess 24. We will be having a French Bishop Chess cast. These are the links for the French Bishop Chess podcast. Please enjoy. Cheers and ciao.